All right, good evening. I'd like to call the meeting to order at 6:29, actually, a minute early. Any adjustments to the agenda, Mr. Downing?
I have none.
Anyone else? Seeing none, motion to accept the board meeting agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second. All those in favor? Thank you. Recognitions this evening?
Do not have any.
I would just like to make one to Melinda Ogden for her achievement of a 1,000-point score at the girls' Searsport basketball. I attended that game. It was a well-attended game, quite a loud crowd, and it was good to see everybody out supporting their team members, and congratulations to her. Consideration of the minutes, regular board meeting, December 22nd, 2015.
So moved.
Second. Any corrections or changes anybody noticed? All those in favor? Opposed? One abstention?
Yeah.
Consent minutes, meeting of the Buildings and Grounds Transportation Committee on December 30th, 2015. So moved.
Second.
Corrections or changes? All those in favor? Unanimous, thank you. Presentations this evening?
Public.
Public participation, Mr. Gilway?
Good evening. I'm James Gilway from town of Searsport, and I'm here to talk a little bit more about the magnet school and our progress, and I have a bit of a request. We have permission and we are opening an office down on Main Street in the Hamilton Learning Center. After talking with members of the board and Liz, the director, Liz Lodge, we came to an agreement that we would be opening this office in order to advance the school and to identify candidates for the directors of the school, to set up our 501c3 that's needed, to identify the advisory board as well, and basically to put a face out there and start doing that. Captain Flanagan, who's been working with me, he's a ship's captain. He's just recently retired and is very keen on bringing this to Maine. He actually made the proposal to do a similar school down in Rockland, and in fact did turn out a night school through the RSU down there. He's going to volunteer to come up here and sit in the office and make phone calls and start working on this for me. We've advanced a bit. It goes a little bit slower than I would like to, I'm sure, than what a lot of others would like to as well. But I did receive a call last week from the governor's office hoping to have some names identified for appointment. This, in my mind, was a pretty substantial step, since it's the first time I've heard something from the governor's office in reference to the school that's not been a no. Anyway, going to the actual legislation and the chaptered law, one of the positions that is required is a member of the regional school unit board of the regional school unit in which the school is located, who must be from the community in which the school is located, or the member's designee selected to that board. So that got me to thinking. I know in earlier meetings you've indicated, and I agree, Chris your superintendent should be on this board to help develop what the curriculum looks like. With that being said, I think if you were to make him your designee, and there was still a member of the board who was interested, there are an additional 10 slots on this board to be filled. And I think if there were one, maybe even two members who really wanted to be on the board, if the governor's office didn't object to it, I would certainly not tell you what to do, but if you designated Mr. Downing as your representative from the RSU, it gives him the slot on the board. There's no specific slot ID'd for the superintendent of the district. It's for a board member. So I think, again, I certainly don't want to say what to do, and if anyone has an interest in helping develop this curriculum and present it forward, I would certainly be interested at this point in putting that out there. And I do have packets, and I will give at least one. And this is how someone gets appointed to any committee or board on the state level. The packet includes such thing as the application to the governor's office, the authorization of release for personal information for appointments, let's see, the clearance for the appointed position, and finally the legislative staff questionnaire for gubernatorial nominees. And that's about all I have right at this point. I certainly would entertain any questions. Absolutely. Yeah.
What is your next step? I know you're going to open the office. Mr. Flanagan's, what is the next big step that this process is going to take?
The next major step is getting these names assembled, getting them in front of the governor, getting the governor to appoint the ones that are in his responsibility, and then push the other ones off to the legislature. I know it's really aggressive, but I hope to have some names in front of the governor before the end of the month, and perhaps the remainder of the names in February, so that maybe in March they could start the process of vetting the different curriculums. We've already collected at least 5 different curriculums, so there are some things to look at and some considerations already there. I did, in fact, Captain Flanagan and myself attended the school board meeting for the Limestone Magnet School in Bangor in November. I gave up the last day of hunting season to do this, but it was, although I didn't tag out, it was well worth the effort, because we got up there for the meeting, the trustee meeting, and the nonprofit meeting, and committees. So it was really a whole day of learning, being immersed in their world, and then learning from it. I think in the time since I've met with you and now, it's come to my attention through legislative aides out in Augusta that the federal funding package, the federal funding authorization, Chris might know this better than I because I'm repeating what was in an email to me, is underway to be approved. And part of that federal authorization includes specific language funding magnet schools to the tune, I think, in 2017 of somewhere near $95 million to. I'm not sure. The way it was written to me, it was written as the federal authorization. No child in the Century schools, yeah, and that's now includes magnet school language. So when you talk about the perfect storm coming together, I think we started from zero, nothing to offer, to now having an opportunity where the state of Maine, because we're the next one in line to have a magnet school, is going to be leaving money on the table if we don't push forward and get this through. Maybe that's why there's been a change of attitude. Frankly, I don't know. But just as from the beginning, I am dedicated to pushing this forward and getting us to the next step. And certainly, as soon as you fill out the forms, I think as a board, if you're going to have Superintendent Downing be your representative as the board, you should probably vote on it to make it official. And then again, it's still subject to the governor's approval. So, and as far as the others, Dustin's a resident with interest. He fits in the categories, and I would certainly put his name forward as a concerned citizen and a resident. So
So, is this one way that the governor can railroad this by not nominating, or can you go past the governor and then
there's no there were certainly some recommended gamesmanship given to me early on about ways we could make an amendment and we could do this and we could do that. Right now the law exists. It's already chaptered. It's gone across this roller coaster ride of ups and downs. We're not at the bottom and we're not at the top, but we keep chugging along, and I think we just keep going. Having the governor's office reach out to me a week ago was in my opinion, a real pivotal point to say they want to appoint these people, they want to move it forward, they're committed to it, we're going to get it done. So I'm at this point, I wouldn't do anything but move names forward to the governor's office. They were very appreciative. They seemed enthusiastic and also very appreciative that I was already working on this, because they had no idea. They said, we don't know where to go. I said, well, I already had some names put together, and again, there's a vetting process beyond me, but they were very happy to have me already involved in the process.
Well, I appreciate the update. I heard anything for a while. It's read anything in the paper, and so I'm glad to hear the progress.
I hope that I'm for being in politics, I'm the last politician that wants to be in the paper, but I really do want to put this like a grand opening of the office down there so I can bring some attention to it. There's already a sign in the window. Mike Flanagan's a real enthusiastic person. If you've ever met him, you'll see. But I really do need to bring some more attention to it. And I need to let people know we're alive and we're still kicking, and we're going to do everything in our efforts to make this a reality for Searsport. And I really appreciate the efforts of the Penobscot Marine Museum. They really didn't have to think twice when I said I needed a little bit of space, and that is just a little bit of space. There'll be enough room for a desk and a chair and a computer. That's about it. But it's very appreciated, because I think it's what we really need to move to this next level. So. Right next door, yeah. Yep. So, which is great. Thank you. Yep.
I just have a couple items because we had Christmas vacation and some other things on the agenda that I take care of. Real quickly, the 16-17 school calendar is well underway, being developed, and we presented to you on January 26th. Met with some representatives of the staff, and as well as I was over to Wall County Tech Center today to look at the regional calendar, which can only have 5 December days. Looks like we've got that ironed out, so I'll bring the draft to you next board meeting on January 27th. Building. Building and grounds, Transportation Committee met last year on December 30th. We got minutes and consent agenda, minutes, and the committee will be scheduling another meeting. We haven't set the date yet, and at that meeting, we have requested that the Director of Facilities and the Director of Transportation provide us with a chart which will break out the hourly work and areas in which the employees are covering. Negotiations were conducted on this past Thursday, on January 7th. Next negotiations will be on Wednesday, February 3rd, and then again on February 11th, which is a Thursday. And that the information that came out of the January 7th meeting will be on the agenda under executive session, under new business. And the last point is a follow-up. Mediation has been set, or at least the date has been set, for February 4th in Portland. We'll be represented by Mr. Bagley and myself, and we'll be down there with Mr. Spencer from Drummond Woodsum, and we'll be in mediation, probably all day. So, that's my report, and I'll answer any questions that folks may have.
Anyone? Thank you, Chris. Committee reports, building and ground transportation.
I would just defer to the posted notes. They're very comprehensive for this week for the discussion that we had. It was a very robust discussion. So the only thing I would add as a footnote is that there's a plan to meet with Siemens, I believe the week of the 10th, to review our building performance and sustainability plan with them a little bit more in detail. But all in all, we are well on our way to developing a solid 5-year plan, 10-year plan, and also trying to identify those items which we feel should be a priority as part of the overall discussion for next year's budget. And that's where we're at right now.
Any questions? Thank you, Dustin. Old business discussion and update on main PERS litigation, which I believe you just covered.
Yeah, February 4th.
New business consideration approval of RSU 20 PLC SS plan, which I believe you should have received via email and your packet.
This is the plan that is required of all school districts. It's the recertification process that teachers go through. There's members of the teaching staff that are on there. They represent each of our schools. Teachers need to submit an action plan 2 years in advance. The committee needs to approve that, and then they follow the process, and then the committee, for lack of a better term, signs off that they've met the action plan, that they have the recommendation, and then that goes to the state for the final review with all of the information that's required, as well as the fee that's required for recertification. So our group, the RSU 20 group, took the plan, revised it, and as you can see on the bottom of the cover page, that the DOE did approve the endorsement of this plan on October 5th, 2015, but it does require motion from the board.
And this is an annual adoption, one of those annual adoptions, or is this because we made changes to the plan? Chris?
Made changes to it.
It does cite in it, if I recall, in this original summary, that this was as a result of the fact that since deconsolidation,
Right.
this was a requirement by the DOE.
Yeah.
I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Any discussion, questions?
Just found out what the PLCSS stood for. And it's not something that you would hear about. I can honestly say in my 7 or 8 years associated with the school as being a knowledge board member, first information I've gotten on it. But if you explained it, it's a state mandated. We have approximately 6 people on the committee.
Correct.
Are they compensated in any way by the school?
The compensation is that one of the courses, if they decide to take a course at the university, the district pays for that in addition to the contract, because the contract allows 9, so we give them instead of remuneration, we give them college credit if they so earn it.
Excellent compensation.
Yeah.
You've got notes all along here, but obviously this isn't something that's brand new. It's been here for many years, state mandated. They talk about things like provide maintenance of the cumulative confidential file. And I'm assuming there are safeguards regarding that. 5. They repeat themselves many times here. But I have my questions answered.
And there's 2 points, Bill, that I'll bring up to that. One is that in 2010, the state changed from all recertification going down to the state office, and them having to review it all, they put it on to the locals. And that's not just for teachers, but administrators actually have to do it as well. But we have a regional one down out of Rockland. The other is that this is a template that all schools had to follow. So the state developed it. I won't say any more.
It reads very similar to Falmouth's PLCs. The one thing I just want to say that I think that struck me throughout reading this summary, which was very good, and I would agree some spots are very redundant, but in particular, it seems to provide plenty of opportunity to hold all those involved accountable for whether or not this is being adhered to and executed according to plan. So that was good to see.
Anyone else? We have a motion on the floor. All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. 12.2, consideration approval to lease Chromebooks for students. Mr. Bradford, it's your time to shine.
Is this microphone on? Does it need to be used? But if I move it over here, do I need this to broadcast, or can I just talk loud? I'll move it. I'll move it. I'll do that. During the budget process for this current school year, one of the things I had brought up was the need for refreshing the hardware on a regular basis. It's something we haven't been able to do in the past, although it has been something we want to do. So the leasing of the Chromebooks could be one portion of that. One thing I do want to caution is, as in the world of technology, I just listened where you said they're looking at a 5 and a 10-year plan when it comes to the transportation and building and grounds. Well, in the world of IT, 6 years is a long way out. If we think back 6 years, the first iPad wasn't out yet. So things are going to change a lot in the next 6 years, but what I've tried to do is put something that looks like it might work over 6 years, but I do want to point that out, and for you to know that if I say this is a 5 or a 6 or a 7-year plan, next year we'll be looking at it again because things will change. So it'll be constantly updated. It's not something we can sit back on and then in 6 years say, okay, let's dust it off. During the budget process, I always like to point out the technology goals that are laid out in our tech plan. So this is just a quick review of those. And the two that would be addressed with the Chromebooks and a refresh are the excuse me, promote effective use of technology and provide technology equipment, infrastructure, and support. And the hardware refresh cycle that we talked about during the budget process, the Chromebooks would concentrate on the staff and student devices, which is something that we should be looking at every 4 to 5 years. And we did put money in this year's budget to do part of that. So the leasing of the Chromebooks would not use any money that's not in the budget. However, if we enter into a lease, it means the board would have to commit to leasing, in year 2, year 3, and year 4. I want to take a look at the spreadsheet that I had sent out to you, and jump to that. One thing I'd like to point out in that spreadsheet is if you recall, for those of you that were on the board, in 2013, we purchased these white MacBooks that came off the MLTI 3 lease. We purchased them for $50 a piece. They were already 4 years old. These are vintage 2009. We purchased those because the old iBooks that we were using were coming to the point that the staff and the students weren't finding them usable in class. These were a great stopgap measure, but now these devices this current year, based on the operating system updates that have happened, are in that same state as the old iBooks. So students and staff are finding them not a functioning piece, and that has to do with the hardware refresh. So in that spreadsheet that I sent out, I do want to point out two things I noticed in preparation for this meeting, and I've marked them here in red. I put wrong figures in the spreadsheet. The totals work out all right when you get up to here. But in the you'll see that in this cell, the number you have on your spreadsheet is 12,161, and it should be 15,000. That's because as I went through, I don't know how familiar you are with spreadsheets. I did make a point in the email, but across the bottom are a series of these tabs that represent the individual schools. And in one of the schools, I put the information in the wrong spot, so it transferred to this main page in the wrong spot. I did want to point that out. The master tab, this first page that you see here, is a comparison of a 3-year lease, a 4-year lease at the bottom, and then if we were to just outright purchase the devices, as in column H here. And I also added this column in here, which would be the amount that would have to be budgeted each year if we were to sustain leasing. So next year, in the 16-17 budget, if I were to ask for additional devices, we would have to, of course, budget what we leased this year plus what's being asked for next year. As I said, the tabs across the bottom represent the individual schools, and then I broke that data out by what the students need and what the staff needs. There are a few variables that I need to point out as we go through this. The biggest one is the MLTI laptop program for the 7th and the 8th grade. Every time we get to this point in the cycle, we're not sure exactly what's going to happen. Is there going to be an MLTI 5 or an MLTI 6 4 years after that? So as we look at these numbers, what I did in the 17-18 school year, I made the assumption that MLTI will continue. So that would be the first year of the new MLTI cycle. Everybody's familiar with the MLTI. That's the laptops that go to the 7th and the 8th grade. Those are provided to us by the state, so we don't have to worry about replacing those devices. So I used in this spreadsheet, I used for years 2017 and 18 that we would get those. But then the next cycle in 2021, I don't know. So we would have to consider that as we go through. If the next round of MLTI it's decided that it doesn't go forward, then in 17-18 we're looking at replacing devices in the 7th and the 8th grade. And then, you know, if there's no MLTI 5, I can assume there'll be no MLTI 6, which will be 4 years after that. A couple of other things we need to consider when we're looking at, if we're looking at a Chromebook device. A Chromebook device, I should have brought one with me, is just a simple internet kind of laptop. It doesn't have any software that's loaded on it. It connects to the browser, connects to the web, and then you can use things like our Google Mail that we use, Google Documents. Anything accessible through the web, the Chromebook can do. It has excellent, from my perspective, excellent management features, because if we want to put a new app on it, we do it in a central location, and the next time it's turned on, that app is there. Right now, we used it last year for Smarter Balanced, and right now the ELL program, the English Language Learners, they have a new online test that they have to do. It's not the same as Smarter Balance, but it's the same principle. We're going to deploy it through the Chromebooks. I just had to put the app in the management console, and they open it up, and it becomes their testing machine. So it's fairly easy. And then when they're done, I just take the app off, and it's back to where it was. And they can be used by several students, or they can be assigned to a student either way. So when we look at the Chromebooks, we have to keep in mind that we have 2 computer labs that are still in existence in the middle school and the high school. And if in the future a decision is made to put in some kind of digital photography class, we might have to look at upgrading the lab computers because the Chromebooks wouldn't have that functionality built in. Right now, that's not in the plan, but I just want to make you aware that that's a variable that would look at in a 6-year plan. The other thing, because it's been a long time since we did any leasing, and we've never really had a good hardware refresh cycle, some variables that we'll look at will be, in the K-5 realm, do we need to replace them every 4 years? Maybe it's every 5 years. And the staff machines, do they have to be every 4 years? Maybe it's every 5 years. That'll be something that'll have to be looked at as we go along. So that's what a hardware refresh cycle looks like. Here's the leasing information. And my recommendations are, we've got money in the budget. We've budgeted $18,000 to buy outright purchase a set of Chromebooks. We can lease them for $6,624. You should have received a handout for the Gorham leasing. That would get us 100 devices. $6,624 is my recommendation for a 3-year lease. And that would be a future recommendation I would have would be, at the high school level, a consideration whether those devices could be offered up for sale to students as they exit out the 12th grade. So if we were to go that route, we'd have to have a 3-year lease, because this year's freshmen, we'd want that lease to be expired before they go out the door, otherwise we couldn't offer them for sale. The lease documentation that you have is a $1 buyout. I had Deanna look at Gorham Leasing, which is a company we normally use, and then I have quotes from 3 different vendors for not only the devices, but their leasing company as well. This lease from Gorham came out with the least amount. So it's the best offer. So the immediate recommendation is the 100 Chromebook lease. That would be a 3-year lease. Long term, next year, looking at in 16-17, budgeting to do a 4-year lease to continue replacing the devices that the freshmen would have. So this year's freshmen, if they got the Chromebooks, would take them to the 10th grade. The incoming freshmen would have no devices, so they would get the devices that we would lease next year, plus replacing and updating some devices in the elementary school. And the same would be for 17-18 and 18-19. I mentioned having the graduating classes, the opportunity for them to purchase things, and the same I'd like to recommend for staff. Now, it's not something we need to examine here. I know the leasing is the item on the agenda. And also, I don't know how it impacts the policies that are written in the board for dispensing equipment that belongs to the school district. But I just wanted to bring that up because it is a possibility. And that's the information that I have regarding the leasing on these Chromebooks.
I'll start just with a comment. I like the last point about the buyout plan for the seniors. Obviously, more available for the staff. In particular, one question I had is, maybe you can bring me up to speed on this. I've seen iPads around, but what is our overall touch/interactive footprint in the school, and how does that kind of integrate with this? Because as I'm looking at these lease unit costs, it doesn't seem like we'd be that far off in Surface Pro iPad, and whether or not there's a case to be made for supplementing some of these.
Right. So the Surface Pro is going to run you between $700 and $800.
At a lease cost?
No, I didn't look at the lease cost. One of the things we looked at with the Chromebook is the ease with which we can manage it and deploy it. So at the end of the year, when we collect them all back in and we want to prepare them for the next school year, it isn't really scrubbing because there's nothing really on them. So it's the management console piece. We have less problem with viruses and malware. And they're a little bit more rugged. The device we were looking at isn't your typical Chromebook. I mean, if you look, you'll see that there are Chromebooks that are a lot less expensive. We looked at something that had rubber corners on them so that they'll be a little bit more durable in the hands of students if they're taking them home. We also looked at options so that if in the future, let's say our hardware refresh cycle doesn't go any further, those could be repurposed and installed with a traditional operating system on them. We are looking at the elementary level, the staff we're looking at several possibilities. Surface Pro being one, a MacBook, traditional Windows 10 deployment, a Linux, and this would be just for staff machines. As far as, in the past, we kind of looked at the K-12 as being similar devices K to 12. What we've started to do this year is look at maybe the K-5 need different devices, K-1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 6 through 12, pretty much the same device could exist. And then we might need those specialty labs if we get to the part where we've got courses that need those kind of things.
Yeah, so in my research in this, the only concern that I have, and it's really not even a concern, but more just kind of a thought I have about the long-term feasibility of whatever our technology plan is that the emerging need for, more particularly in the elementary school level than the high school level, the need for an interactive framework by which these kids can learn in untraditional methods. Certainly there's a need to ensure that they have the ability to learn basic computing skills, interaction via typing, all of which obviously you could acclimate to these tablet devices now through Surface Pro and iPad.
Right.
But in particular, it's not just utilizing the touch feature, but the interaction via camera, some of the other apps that are available. I mean, there's a wealth of research that's out there about the need to kind of do these things because this is the world that they will live in.
Yes.
I absolutely agree with you on the durability piece. Hands down, there's no comparison between the two, but in particular, not saying a complete widespread switch over, but a need to fill or at least have enough of those to be able to supply that experience to as many of those kids as we can, as often as we can.
Right, so sorry.
Yep, no, go ahead.
These 100 Chromebooks would be grades 6 and 9.
Sure.
We put a cart of iPads in the K-1 at the elementary school this year. Proposal for next year's budget, which I know is off topic, but will include what do we do with the second and third grade, because they're the kind of the dip. There's higher end devices for the third, fourth, and fifth graders, fourth and fifth graders. And we've got these new tablets for the K-1, and now we've got this 2-3 realm. So that's something we are exploring. I have put in some dollars in the budget for next year, and when it comes budget time, you'll see that it's not quite the same amount as this lease because we haven't landed on an option yet. So primarily this would be for 100 Chromebooks to lease that would go to the 6th and the 9th grade.
Makes sense.
The 6th grade laptops are actually 2007, 2008 MacBooks, and we've tried to stretch them as long as possible, but they're having serious problems. And it's gotten to the point where they're not cost effective to repair anymore. It costs $100 to buy one on eBay, and it costs $400 to replace the screen. So we're getting to the point where we've used them well, and we need to look at refreshing them.
So I assume, Bob, that our repair cost will be less with the Chromebooks versus the Apple products?
Yes, the overall cost of the Chromebooks would reduce our repair cost also, because the replacement cost is even if we broke the screen, we can get another one for $250. I mean, the whole device. Right. It would be, we wouldn't necessarily repair them anymore. unfortunately, as the trend goes in electronics, it's get rid of it.
Disposable. Throw it away.
We would keep the device in case there were other parts of it that we could salvage, but that's the other look at when we go to a Chromebook, as opposed to a Surface or a traditional laptop or even an iPad. The repair cost is something then you have to look at because it's more expensive, the device to repurchase.
Anyone else? Someone want to make a motion on Bob's recommendation?
So moved.
Any discussion amongst the board? So your motion is to go with a 3-year lease? Dustin?
Yes.
We need to make sure that that's in
Yeah,
there.
absolutely, that's an important clarification.
We need to write that in the motion. Amounts financed, $19,300 at 2.9% fixed interest over a 3-year annual lease. All those in favor? Unanimous? Thank you. Thank you, Bob, as always, for bringing this to us and giving us the information we need and staying on top of things. Moving on to 12.3, consideration approval of stipend for NCLB Coordinator 2015-16.
That would be Brenda Hallwigger, who, if you remember, retired last year and has been doing Title I and Title IV and all that, and we have it now approved by what then was known as the NCLB. Now it's going to change names. We just don't know what it's going to be yet. And we're recommending the $9,000, which is not local money. It all comes from the grant. And that is what is comparable to other coordinators in the area.
Motion?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Unanimous, thank you. Consideration of extending the contract of the superintendent of schools and setting a salary for the 2016-17 school year.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or discussions? I'll read the certification of employment for superintendent. The salary remains the same of $115,000. If you was to look at this paperwork, it shows that Mr. Downing only made 46, but that's because it was split in the budget between the principal and the superintendent's position, but his salary remains the same. And that is to go through the 2016-17 school year. Seeing no one else, all those in favor? Opposed, abstentions, unanimous, thank you. 12.5, executive session for the purpose of labor contract negotiations pursuant to 1 MRSA 4056D. This will be an executive session in which everybody will have to leave. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Dustin,
All those in favor?
who seconded?
There will be no action after the executive session, so you will not miss anything. Thank you.